Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the previous class, if you people remind, we were discussing about risk and return. We discussed about the definition of risk. Then after that we discussed about the two components of return. Then there was a small example of return, that how you will calculate return for a single period. Then after that we discussed about relative return, that it solved the problem of negative returns. Then after that we discussed about cumulative wealth index. And we discussed that cumulative wealth index, just a minute, we discussed about cumulative wealth index, that it tells you about the wealth created within after some period of time. Suppose our initial investment, it was $100,000. First year there is a return of suppose 20%. Then second year return is suppose 30%. Then third year, suppose there is a loss of 20%. Then suppose there is a profit of again, suppose 15%. And fifth year there is a profit of 25%. Now this thing, this 20%, 30%, minus 20%, 15%, 25%, total return is just giving information about this thing, that is change in wealth. Change in wealth. Writing shortly. Change in wealth. This is just telling us, this total return is just telling us about the change in wealth. Suppose 1 lakh is your investment, so there will be a change of 20%. It is not telling us about this thing, that what will this amount become. If there is a change of 20%, so what will be our total wealth? So total return is just telling us about the change in wealth. It is not telling us about what is your total amount. Now means what is your wealth index. So cumulative wealth index, CWI, it is telling us about the change in wealth. It is telling us about your total wealth after n periods of time. We discussed about this, and we discussed the example, an example also. So this is the formula. CWI is equal to wealth index in the beginning, I naught. Wealth W, wealth I index, and naught means today's wealth. 1 plus total return 1, the first year return, then 1 plus total return 2, the second year return, then so on, 1 plus total return n. So here it is telling us now if we will calculate this thing, so it will give us complete information about our wealth after n periods of time. See, it will become 1 lakh, because our initial investment it is 1 lakh. Now 1 plus total return 1, it is 20%. Then 1 plus total return 2, 1 plus 30%. Then 1 minus 20%, because there is a loss. Then 1 plus 15%. And then 1 plus 25%. Now when you will calculate all these values, you will get wealth index after 5 years, means how much this money becomes after 5 years. Now look at this. Find the calculator. Now see, what was our initial amount? 100,000 multiplied by 1 plus 20% means 1.20, multiplied by 1.3, 1 plus 30% means 1.30, multiplied by 1 minus 20% means 0.80, then multiplied by 1 plus 15, so 1.15, and multiplied by 1.25, 1.25. See, I am multiplying all these values with 1 lakh. So we are getting 1,79,400. Now see, total return is not telling us about this wealth. At what will our initial investment becomes, but this cumulative wealth index, it is telling us about the wealth after n periods of time, that what will be our wealth after n periods of time. So see, there are 5 years, and after 5 years our wealth becomes 179,400. It was 100,000, and then after 5 years it becomes 179,400. So cumulative wealth index, it gives us information about our wealth after n periods of time. So total return, it is just telling us about the change in wealth, that there is a 20% change, there is a 30% change, but it is not giving information about your total wealth. Then cumulative wealth and total return. Note that the values for the cumulative wealth index can be used to calculate the rate of a return for a given period using the following equation. Keep in mind. Now see, this is the first year return, this is the second year return, this is a loss, there is another return, there is another return. So what is the total return? Means, in suppose it was 2015, our initial investment. So first year there is a 20% profit, the second year there is a 30%, third year 16, 17, 18, 19, and 2019 there is a 25% return. So now what is basically the total return? What is our total return? 20, 30, 20, 15, 25. So what is the total return? We don't have information about the total return for these 5 years. We have information about just 1 year's return. The first year 20, the second year 30, the third year minus 20, then 15, and then 25. But there is no information about these collective periods, that what is the total return, 30%, 25%, 15%, 10%, what? Total return for these 5 periods. So now this formula, cumulative wealth and total return, this formula, total return for n periods of time, this will give you information about the total return for these n periods of times. See, total return, previously we were calculating total return for 1 period, but now it is for n periods, is equal to cumulative wealth index after n years divided by cumulative wealth index n minus 1, means the first year. See here, cumulative wealth index n minus 1 means if you are calculating it for 4 years, for 5 years, whatever that is, and minus 1. Now see, after n periods, here is n minus 1. Now after n periods, what is our cumulative return? It was 179,400 after 5 years. 179 and 400. What was the cumulative return? Suppose we are calculating from 2015 to 2019. In 2019, what is the cumulative wealth? It is 179,400. 179,400, and here it was 100,000. Now we want to calculate the return here between these 2 periods of time. So cumulative wealth index n minus 1, it is 100,000 and minus 1. So now calculate this using calculator. 179,400 divided by 100,000 is equal to 1.79 and minus 1, which is equal to 0.79, means 79.4%. that is the total return for these n periods of times, means we earned 79% return in these 5 years. So cumulative wealth, it is used for calculating the total return. Just like here it is mentioned that cumulative wealth and total return. Cumulative wealth and total return means cumulative wealth can be used to calculate total return for n periods of time. Keep in mind one thing, this formula, it was used to calculate the return for only one period. This formula. But now this formula, this new formula, if you have information about cumulative wealth, you can use this formula to calculate the return for n periods of time, these n periods of time. So total return is cumulative wealth index n. Cumulative wealth index n minus 1 means the beginning, n minus 1. So total return n, total return for period n, CWI, the cumulative wealth index. So this was about calculating total return for n periods of time. This is the end of this chapter. We're going to start lecture 6. Okay. Measures describing a return series. Total return, we discussed about this. Relative return and cumulative wealth index are useful for a given single time period. What about summarizing return over several time periods? Arithmetic mean are simply the mean. There is another measure that is used for calculating returns, that is arithmetic mean. You know about arithmetic mean. Summation x divided by n. In statistics, you people already studied this thing. Now, arithmetic versus geometric mean. Arithmetic mean does not measure the compound growth rate over time. There is a problem with arithmetic mean. You know about compounding, compound rate. Arithmetic mean, it is not measuring the compound rate. Compound growth rate over time, it is not measuring that time. Only used for common purposes to calculate average. It is just calculating what? It is used to calculate the average for different periods of time. So arithmetic mean does not measure the compound growth rate over time. There is a problem that it is not measuring the compound growth rate over time. Geometric mean reflects compound cumulative returns over more than one period. But geometric mean, it is measuring the compound growth for n periods of for more than one periods. Basically, inshallah, in the next class, then I will tell you about the difference between these two, that which measure is a good measure and which measure is not a good measure. Inshallah, with the help of an example, I will tell you about this thing, that which measure is a good measure, arithmetic mean or geometric mean. Here the length of the video, it is increasing, so inshallah in the next class we'll discuss about that. Assalamu alaikum.